Come on, nation. My steps are ordered. My way is clear. And my God is near. And he says in his word, thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Living with total, living with total. I'm living with total peace. Living with total, living with total. I'm living with total peace. Living with total, living with total. I'm living.
So in the church society, we have gotten a little confused, and this is important to us being on the right footing going forward as it relates to end time things. Eschatology is a term that's used in theology. It's called, it means the doctrine of last days or the doctrine of last things. So it talks about the things that are to be, that should be the last. And it is in that phrase that I find that we've gotten a little turned around, and it has brought some issues of credibility to the house of God, directly and indirectly. So when you think of the doctrine of last days or the doctrine of last things, it is in that discipline where believers and scholars spend their day trying to point to end time prophecies and things that are going to occur. I am 60, I just think for a minute, I am 64 years old. I'll be 65. The Lord should spend my life in June. And I am still hearing people say, a revival's coming. A revival's coming. I keep hearing that. That revival's been coming for a long time. Now, I don't know who started this revival coming thing. I don't really see it in scriptures, and I'm not going to fight against it because it's not that important to me. But it is annoying to hear it over and over again, and the revival never comes. The preacher never shows up. The revivalist doesn't make it to the meeting, and it bugs me. And it made me wonder, and it makes me wonder, what makes us feel like we need to trumpet in an idea based on circumstances, and it's not necessary. So I'm assuming because of apostasy or because of the gross sins of the world, someone gave birth to that concept of revival coming. And that concept is based on what they see, and they can actually tie it to scripture. And so I'm guessing they feel the need to say revival's coming. And it's important to me that if you're going to speak a truth that you're going to tie to God, accuracy is paramount. You have to make sure that when you speak that truth, that you're not speaking it because it's catchy to say, because you heard someone else say it, or you were at the microphone and you just ran out of words and needed to say something. So that sounded like the thing to do. It's important that you don't do that. It's important that you speak things with clarity and with understanding, and not based on the hype or because it's fashionable to do that. And so I think that happens, and it's innocent. I don't really feel that I would call them a false prophet per se. I would say they're driven by a feeling, but they're not being clear on their explanations, and maybe because they can't be. So I'm saying all that to say, in the doctrine of last days, theology is that we look at what's happening, and when we see what's happening, we then associate it with scriptures, and we know the scripture says these things are going to be in the last days. And so like those who are saying revival is coming, we make a leap and we identify an impending period to come. And in the case of the doctrine of last things, in the last days, perilous times shall arise. And it talks about the very aspects of men's character. It talks about them being heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, effeminate. It talks about disobedient to parents. It goes on and on with various descriptions of personalities and characters that will be at the surface of other than a normal society. And you tie it to the fact that Paul says to Timothy, in the last days. And then you also tie it to the fact where Jesus says in Matthew 24 that there should be wars and rumors of war, pestilence and famine and nakedness. Well, not nakedness, but famine and pestilence and wars and rumors of war, earthquakes. That's what it was in diverse places. Nation rising against a nation. Love of many waxing cold. And we look at that and say, ha, he's on his way, because he said these things would be. And as I was doing a study, I recognized when it comes to time, man is all over the map. Now, this was an interesting bit of information I came upon as I was looking at the idea of time. Now, I do recall in one of my studies, I read somewhere where it said that a minute wasn't always 60 seconds. Now, I think at some point in human history, a minute was like 90 seconds. And they brought it down to 60. I do know that we weren't always on the calendar that we're on now. Back some time ago, the calendar was based on the planetary bodies. It was the solar and the lunar, based on the seasons. And then, when they got away from the agrarian society, the agricultural society, it became more modernized, and they created this other calendar that was based on the modern society. They didn't need the calendar of the harvest, because people aren't doing harvest anymore that much. Before it was a means of funds, a means of commerce. It isn't any longer. And so they saw the need with modernization. Industrial age came in to change it. And I think the calendar we have now came like in the 1500s. And so that was a change. And the reason that discussion was important to me is because all of that happens in and around prophecy. And I often wonder, where prophecy is tied in. If a minute was once 90 seconds and then went down to 60 seconds, and if leap year was introduced and the earth loses rotation every so many years, 4 minutes, they got to change the nuclear clock, move it up and down a minute to stay consistent with the time one started, then where does the prophecy fall is obviously the question I have. And how does that impact our understanding of time? That was number one. That's a little deep, but I had to say that. So it's important we understand that. That's not where I'm going, but I just wanted to put that out here for you. But the thing that is very key are the characters, are the ideas of men's behaviors, and the things that are going on agriculturally, famine, things that are going on naturally, pestilence, things that are going on culturally, wars and rumors of war. Those things, heady, high-minded, haters of good, lovers of pleasure. All those things are feeding into last day teachings, eschatology. And when we see those things, and I've had this conversation with many people, they will say, I believe the Lord is coming back soon because he said these things would be. And as I was considering that, I recognized in my discussion on the controversy of time that prophecy is based on something God has put in place, which is called a set time. So whenever you're dealing with prophetic utterance, more or less, there are two things you need to consider. One is based on time and a set time. And then also you must enter into it what I call cycles. And that's very important. So I wrote some notes to myself here. And let me see if I can make sense out of it because it's on my phone. I'm going to read it to you and bring this forward and then we're going to close with prayer. So I have here the controversy of time. In time, prophecy is based on reoccurring cycles. I write the church has confused cycles as a final sign. We will go through many cycles of the same thing, I write. For instance, war, famine, pestilence. But the set time happens only once within those reoccurring cycles. So you have time, a cycle, and a set time. I write in my notes. Time is a counting of years based on the age of the earth and the fulfillment of particular prophecy. The challenge of man is to identify which calendar was being used when the prophecy was given, solar, lunar, or sidereal. As well, how were the hours counted? Cycles, the social behaviors I have, and climate conditions that repeat in a cyclical manner until, I write, that set time has been reached. Set time is the actual date or season in which the prophecy is to come to pass. Our problem is that when we see a cyclical event taking place, we conclude that the set time is near. That just kind of washed over me as I was getting that inspiration and revelation. And so to bring it home, so you'll hear people say, and I've heard this, and you may have said it yourself, yeah, I believe Jesus is coming soon because he said these things would be. And the understanding I have received with this revelation is he did say those things would be, but those things are going to continue to be. Those are cycles, and they'll continue throughout seasons. But within one of those cycles, a set time of a prophetic event is going to occur. So you may have 10 cycles of wars, rumors of war, famine, pestilence, but the set time isn't in there. However, those are cycles, and those events do speak to, if it was going to happen, it's going to happen while those things are prevalent. And so you may have 10 cycles of wars and rumors of war. And in one of those cycles, there's a set time of prophecy. And that's what we've been missing. And so consequently, not just the Christian church, but Jehovah's Witnesses and others have gone for broke thinking, okay, Jesus said that it will be war, check. Rumors of war, check. Nation rise against nation, check. Famine, check. Pestilence, check. Okay, so he's got to be near. No. Now, you should anticipate him in that time. And as Peter says, when certain things happen, we ought to be certain kinds of people, because you never know when he's going to come, because in that cycle, it's going to be a surprise. Because you don't know the hour or the day, but you do know the cycle. You do know the signs of that cycle. But that cycle may roll and then it'll drop down. You know, we get amazed at, and I've done it, but I've gotten used to this now because I'm starting to think differently, as some of the brashness and some of the evil that seems to be just parading itself as if it's never happened before. Now, that's particularly interesting in this season, because unlike the seasons of our parents and our grandparents, it would have been an anomaly only because they didn't have the internet. But trust me, it existed. Trust me, it was going on. You didn't have the 24-hour media. You didn't have the computer technology. You didn't have the breaking news over your cell phone to remind you how much it was happening. And so, you know, to us, it looks like it's, wow, it's really, no, it's always been like this. We're just more aware of it now. The cycle has always been there. Just think about this. America considers itself a normal society. And we pretty much are, pretty much that. You know, there's some decency here. I tell people all the time, you say what you want. I'll take no other place. I'll live here. I'll take America 100 times over, no matter how bad it may appear to some of y'all. Those talking about going back. I ain't going back nowhere. I'm good. I'll stay in America with all its bad parts. But at the end of the day, it's decent in that sense. Okay? And so, as an individual, you know, we need to recognize that in this modern society, where we are organized and have some sense of structure, we got highways and got bridges. Don't let me be depleting. You go places where they don't have bridges at all. They got dirt roads. And so it may not be in the best of condition because they elect for it not to be in some cases, but it is still the best. And we are structured, and that structure brings structure. It brings discipline. Imagine Rome, where they didn't have this kind of thing going on, where it was too archaic. You got to know, before DNA, there was a lot of murder because folk couldn't get caught. There were a lot of corruption going on because they didn't have good detectives. Laws weren't enforced. You got to know, when men are left to their own design and devices, they get crazy. You see what happens when they have the blackouts or the riots, and ain't no power in the city, and they breaking in stores, taking TVs they can't watch. They lose it. You see when a hurricane comes in and people have to vacate their homes, the state police have to roam the streets because looters are waiting to break in the house to take from you at your most vulnerable time because they feel the law is relaxed. So you already know, in Paul's day, law was relaxed. So you know it was much more. So it's not anything new. But what we do is we look at it with fresh eyes, and we hear it, and we compare it to scriptures, and we forget about the time, the cycle, and the set time. And we say, he's coming right now. And maybe not. There are cycles. And I want to put that in your spirit, because that creates to me a better concept and a more clear enunciation of the truth than us going out on a limb. I think the Jehovah's Witnesses have done it maybe 3 times. I think they've actually prophesied a couple of times that they was coming back, Abraham and Jesus, some kind of concoction they came up with. And folk waited. I remember when I used to do revivals in California, there was a gentleman in California, and the folk had sold everything. And it was waiting on Jesus to come. He ain't come because he looked at the signs. He didn't apply the rule the Lord just gave me. Apply the rule. That's a cycle. It's not going to happen just once. It's going to continue in perpetuity until one day when you think he's not going to come, boom. So the question is he coming because the signs are out there now? Not necessarily. But can he come? Like a thief in the night, he can. And that's what we need to know. That's why the Bible said, be ye also ready. Because if you keep getting false alarms, and then you're going to say what they said, as Peter said in the last days, scoffers shall arise, saying, where is the promise of his coming? For all things have continued the same since the fathers have fallen asleep. The Bible said, this they willingly say, they willingly ignorant of. And so it's important for us to not, feed that misnomer by speaking beyond the capacity of what the Bible teaches. What you can say is if there was a time for him to come, this is the time. But stay away from trying to declare he's coming back soon. And I know you're going to use your deep self. Yeah, because one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years. Folk ain't understanding that. Get away from that. It's good for us to talk about it, but you can't apply that. Just let that part go and deal with it on the surface of it, and simply say, this is the season or cycle in which he will come. May not come now, but he will be something like this when he does. So our senses be heightened. And like the 5 wise virgins, we may not know when the bridegroom is coming, but we're prepared for his coming. The others weren't prepared because they kept hearing the false alarm, maybe, as I was saying. And after a while, that false alarm will lull you to sleep. And then the believer think they got time. And like they did with Moses, what did? They rose up to play. They rose up. Well, he said, we don't know what happened to this Moses. The historical word of mouth of the Jewish community is that they saw a vision in the heavens. And they saw Moses suspended between something, and he was dead. On the 40th day, I don't know if it was something the adversary showed them, a hologram or something, but they saw something. And what they thought they saw was Moses being destroyed. And they said, make us a calf, something we could see. And they killed the son of Miriam. And because Miriam was married to Caleb, the old man that said, give me this mountain. They got married. They birthed the son. It was Aaron, Hur, was Aaron's nephew. And when the folks saw that demonic hologram in the sky, and soon that Moses was dead. At that moment's notice, they wanted to go back to something new or familiar. And it is said that Hur told them no, and they killed him. And they went to Aaron, his uncle, and told him, if you don't do it, we're going to kill you too. Look at that. They made the preachers do it. Okay? And of course, he saw what they did to his nephew, so he capitulated. And so we need to be careful in those enunciations and need to recognize what time it is. It's important for us to know that he's coming, but let's be ready for his coming. And let's not put our minds in a place where we think we have to say to the world. What we should do is work that much more, because he also is going to evaluate what we've done with the gift he's given us. Ours should not be trying to fight the world. I'm going to pray when I say this. Young man out here on internet got on my nerves. I had to stop looking at his feeds because out there fighting sin and talking about folk and stuff. And I said, man, you need to, somebody said, he's preaching against sin. I said, no, he's not preaching. He's posting. I said, you need to turn off those devices and get out on the street and do it the Bible way. You know, anybody can post. Get out there and do it. Meet the demons. Deal with sin. And so we need to deal with things and need to meet things where they are and not be so caught away with the capacity to type something, hit a button, and feel like you done your ministry. You need to meet that demon face to face, or meet that person in need face to face and deal with it the Bible way. This is T. Allen Stringer. Listen, we have moved our location. If you have been following our Intercast ministry or any of our videos, you're going to need to pay attention to what I'm about to say. Everything we produce will now be playing live and stored at hstreamtv.com. Once again, we have moved to hstreamtv.com. So if you want to join in our Intercast ministry, you then need to make your way to hstreamtv.com.
So what are you waiting on? You better click and get. You better click and get.